Hi, gentlemen. Let's we've got some people that I'm going to start admitting that have
That
just
that Zoom voice had a Australian accent. That's interesting.
at least it wasn't like Elvis. Oh my gosh. Well,
There's no such thing as too much Elvis, David.
I guess that's true. And you've got Dolly Parton on the moon behind you.
Mm.
It's like this Maya goddess Ischel kind of thing. I just think it's really amazing. All she needs is like this little rabbit in her hands, and it'd be
Well, she's
perfect.
also she's also a mermaid, so
Yeah, no, I see that.
she's
It's
mm,
great. I mean, I've literally seen that in your apartment so many
that
times.
is true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
Jamie
welcome.
is a big Dolly fan. Sorry,
Yeah, and
sorry.
oh, so am I. So are you. We're like huge. Welcome everybody who is has either logged in or is watching us live on Facebook. I am David Bowles, the co-creator of the Matron, along with Drew Edwards, my partner in crime here,
Howdy.
over up in Austin. I'm down on the border between Mexico and Texas, and Donna, the little town of Donna. And with us are, oh my gosh, these incredible people. We've got Gerry Huntman, who is the evil genius behind IFWG and IPI Comics. Hey there, coming to us from the future and another season. Just is really, really amazing. He's in Australia. I'm just being silly. Um, Gerry, hi. Thank you so much for like taking the time on your Sunday afternoon to pop in. We've also got Chris Sequeira, who's I'm going to always pronounce your name as if I'm speaking Portuguese or Spanish because it's like I can't help it. Um, who is heads up IPI Comics, just a wonderful writer of comics himself, just a brilliant, brilliant guy. And Jason Franks, woohoo, Jason. I don't even. I feel kind of silly that I'm at a loss of what to say about you, but you are an incredible editor, an incredible writer of comics in your own right. Is definitely helping us out with this campaign with this comic and just doing so much with IPI. So I'm glad that all of you guys could be here to talk about this project. And hi to to the people who are with us. We've got John and Sadet, and hopefully more people are watching us on Facebook Live. But we are recording this, and I will eventually put it up on YouTube or whatever. So, Drew, my boy, my bro, it's been 3 years, almost exactly, that we were at Central Texas Teen and Kids Comic Con. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, I was there with my daughter Charlene, and we weren't getting a whole lot of traffic by our little table. This is an event that happens in Round Rock, which is right outside of Austin. General stomping grounds of the matron. She's is up and down, up and down the hill country there, and there's a great event that happens every year there at the Round Rock High School. And I was kind of bored, and I said I'm gonna go over and hang out with Drew for a while. And Drew started talking to me about this project that he had once had in mind. Drew, why don't you just because I just want everybody to know about like how this what the genesis was like. So tell us about what you had originally wanted to do that would eventually morph into the matron.
So the matron has taken on a life very much of its own, but at its root, um, I was a butcher for many years, and I would at one point I lived out in the middle of nowhere, but I had a job in Plano, Texas, and I would drive from the farm that I was living on to a Whole Foods in Plano, and I started thinking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and how I was watching rural Texas sort of being swallowed up as the DFW area just sort of to continue to just expand northward and gobbled it up and everything. And I started thinking about, well, if the wide open spaces of Texas aren't so wide and aren't so open, what would happen to the family from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? What would happen if there was a Starbucks next to their spooky, broken down house where they murder people? And eventually, what this morphed into is a comic pitch that a comic publisher that will now remain nameless very briefly had the rights to do Texas Chainsaw Massacre comics. And at that point, they were like, pitch something to us. So what I pitched to them was called The Last Days of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it was sort of uh, the Dark Knight Returns, but for Leatherface. You know, Leatherface is an old man.
I love it.
But also there was this concept of gentrification, and again going back to the idea of what happens when civilization starts to encroach on this cannibal family. And that's more or less what I had told you about. And you very wisely, I think, said, well, why don't you just still do that, but you come up with your own slasher, your own, you know, serial killer,
Yep.
you know, a new horror icon. And
I remember
you
you really liked that idea because you had been thinking about like, decades later after the events of the 75 film, whenever it was,
yeah.
what would be happening with this family. And you had been thinking about like centering the story more on a matriarch, on a woman who was like, kind of holding the family together, decades after their heyday, and like how she would respond to all these things. And that was when like I said, can I please collaborate with you on this idea? By the
Well,
way, everybody, just let's take a quick moment to welcome Monica Gallagher into the house, or into the chat, or wherever we are.
woo!
Where are you coming to us from? Are you in the Austin area? Where you at?
Yeah, I'm in Austin.
Oh, okay, sweet, sweet, sweet.
Yeah,
So
top row Texas, in my view.
yeah, all right, that's super cool. So we've got our 3 Texans and our 3 Austin, like kind of like the pattern on my screen. It's pretty neat. So what
A
we're talking
global conglomerate.
it's a global conglomerate. Texas
They're
and
in a
Australia.
different order on everybody's screen though, so
I know
Yeah,
that's always a bummer. You want to have your one Brady Bunch square and just keep it.
Right. We just switch to grid or whatever. So what we're doing right now is just kind of. I'm just thinking like walking. I want to kind of walk chronologically through stuff because I want people. And since I'm recording this, also I want there to be like a record for posterity of how this madness got started. So we were talking about its origins 3 years ago, or the seed of it, at the Central Texas Teen and Kid Comic Con that both Drew and I try to go to pretty regularly. We love all the
Cool.
people involved, and I was there with my daughter Charlene promoting our um, graphic novel, The Rise of the Halfling King. And Drew and I were just chatting and hanging out, and he told me about this thing that he had once pitched, a sequel to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which ironically, the film that it would eventually make that kind of ignores all of the ones in between, very much in a Halloween, the recent Halloween films, does play with gentrification. It's really,
Mm.
I don't know, kind of annoying that your idea got passed over, and arguably an inferior idea, I would say.
I am
Isn't that always the case?
Yes, of course.
I'm kind of glad that I didn't end up making that comic, because it's now mutated into this other thing, which I think is, first of all, a female slasher is much more unique. I think. I mean, there's very few, women movie monsters, and definitely very few women slashers. Like, even though, you think back to the original Friday the 13th, and certainly Jason's mom, Pam, she was, very, very, very good at her murderous ways. But
Yeah, it's just too bad she didn't have like a really cool mask like the matron.
yes, that is true.
I mean, it's such a cool mask.
So,
but also, I'm glad because I get to collaborate with you, David, and I get to collaborate with Monica, which is 2 people that I personally really enjoy both of y'all's company, but also, I admire both of your creative talents. So if that comic had happened way back in the early aughts, like, we wouldn't be having this beautiful experience now.
Yes, that's a lovely way to put it. And so what happened, to continue with this chronological kind of documentation of how things went, we then agreed that at some point in the following months, I would go up to Austin. I'm often in town. At the time, my son was living there. At the time, my son, I think all three of my children were living there at the time, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and I was up to visit them one weekend. I was like, okay, let's just grab a chunk of time. And we just kind of went into that back room there in your apartment and just sat down and just crunched, just like figured it out. That's one of the things that I love so much, like just being able to like sit down and say, okay, here's our idea. How do we make it actual reality? How do we go from, okay, it's a cannibal serial killer family. How do we suss that into something? And so we started talking about, so what is unique about Central Texas, about the hill country? And we talked about the culture. We talked about this really interesting intersection of Mexican, um, to some extent Anglo-American, but mostly like German and Czech and Slavic, um, kind of like folklore roots. And so we just started diving in. So what is there about this folklore that we can play from? And we stumbled across this incredible image of an effigy of the goddess Morana, which is burned in Moravia, which is a part of the Czech Republic that a lot of Texas Czechs ancestors came from. And there's a ceremony where Morana is the goddess of winter and death, and right before the spring solstice, they create effigies of her, and children carry the effigies into the forest, and then they're burned and drowned, and that like it's pretty wild. I was like, hell yeah, that sounds woo. It's a lot we can do.
And just to be clear, it's the effigies that are burned and drowned, not the children.
Not the children. I suspect there may have been a time in the very distant past when it might have been the children and they're like, oh, children, now you're going to carry an effigy. This is kind of like your sacrificial lamb. And so you don't have your what's the word I'm looking for? When it's a stand-in for a sacrifice.
Scapegoat.
Yeah, scapegoat. It's the scapegoat for you. So, and in a particular video that we found that was talking about this, they showed in the image of this effigy that had the men made, and a lot of times the effigies just have like crude human faces, but this one had like a wooden face, a wooden mask with these red lines on it, and we were like, holy, oh my God, that looks like a serial killer mask. It looks like a slasher mask. And so we knew like that she's gonna have that mask. And then we looked into more, and Morana uses a sickle, and sickle wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but we definitely wanted her to be an axe murderer. And later on we would find out that the father of the goddess Morana, the god Perun, is the god of storms and lightning, and he has a really, really badass axe, this bearded axe that we had just, chosen because of just how brutal looking it is. And so that was kind of like the creation of the character, just a rising out of mythology. And so then we had to figure out, who is this person? And we really, at the time, I was really like into the Scream films, and especially the last two Scream films, where you have this kind of, inheritance of not just people choosing to be Ghostface, but like an actual inheritance coming through with the daughter of the original Ghostface. I thought that was so cool, and like her grappling with the desire to kill, but not being an evil, person like her father had been. And I was like, how can we build that in? And so we started coming up with this complex idea of there having been a matron, and just like in I was really influenced, I'll be honest with you. Anybody who reads the first volume, and hopefully you will back it and you will get your hands on it, because you don't want to miss the art by Monica and the colors by Harry Saxon are just amazing. We'll show you some preview pages in a second, but you guys remember the sequel, right, to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that opens with the sheriff's department of I think they called it Muerto County, and the sheriff is a Mexican American guy, and they all show up, and they're like, y'all, we've been like turning our heads all this time, but y'all have gone too far now, and then they shoot up the place. And I was like, that's what we need to do. There needs to have been an original matron, and she's been killed, and now many years have passed, and somebody else takes up that mantle. And then we just started, putting the pieces together. It was just like a
Well,
really, really
well,
exciting.
and the thing about making, you think about the original Texas Chainsaw, well, any of the Texas Chainsaw Massacres.
Yeah.
Leatherface is even though he is the icon of that film series, he's a rather passive character.
Yeah.
He does what his family tells him to do. What we've done is we've kind of inverted that. Like the matron, is the one that's calling the shots. Like she has this sort of control over her family, and I think that's in many ways a much more interesting dynamic. And I also think in creating a horror icon from the ground up, I think it allows her, this Clive Barker talks about this a lot when he talks about Pinhead from the Hellraiser series. And he compares it to the Christopher Lee version of Dracula, where there is this what he calls a sinister intelligence.
Mhm.
And I think that we with both versions of the matron, we often get to showcase that this is not just a mindless slasher like Michael Myers or Jason. Even though I love both of those characters, this is someone with a heart and a mind and everything, and they're working things out as they occur. And again, is not in a passive role, but in a very sort of proactive and reactive role.
But that's almost reflected in the title of the series. A matron isn't just a person. A matron is a role,
Yeah.
a function.
Absolutely. And what was really one of the things that we wanted to do to kind of get at that kind of intelligence was to make both matrons essentially working class single moms. In the case of the first one, it's because she kills her husband, and like feeds her husband to her children. But anyway, that's backstory. You'll not absolutely necessary to know. But they're the kinds of inequities and just like social obstacles that working women face in general, and especially working class immigrant, like in the case of the first matron, women who are single, or because they've chosen to, or because of circumstance, are interesting, and play into, because one of the things that you want with a slasher is for your audience to kind of like almost kind of be rooting for them part of the time, like to have this like guilty, like, oh, it would be really great if she just slaughters everybody, screw all those people. And I wanted for us to simultaneously like find her frightening and funny, but also like have some kind of sympathy for her to understand like how somebody could be pushed to that place. So it's this interesting. I was talking to Jason and the rest of you guys a couple days ago, and thinking about like there are like three corners to the kind of horror we have here, because we do have straight up kind of slasher horror of the sort that was made famous by Halloween and Friday the 13th and films like that. But there's also this folk horror element to it that's like deeply rooted in indigenous European, especially ancient Slavic deities and practices and rites and rituals and obscure runes and all this kind of stuff. But the third corner I like is like drama. I'm anybody who follows me on social media knows that I'm a huge fan of like just drama. I love Korean drama, Chinese drama. I love things that are like very emotional and driven by interpersonal relationships or whatever. And I want my horror to be that way as well. And I love horror that does it, and there's plenty of horror out there that does. And that's my cup of tea. And so just trying to craft a story that has those intersections is great. So we spent, a full day, and we hammered out like what we thought of as kind of like a grand scheme, like plan that we have because we both really are annoyed by creators who don't know where they want to be at the end of the big arc of their storytelling. But then we focused down on like what we wanted to do on the first miniseries, that we would be happy, like, if we could get this out there, and if we could never tell anything else, but we could tell the story, we'd be really delighted to tell that story. We broke it out into 6 issues. And then we were like, okay, now we just got to figure out who we're going to take it to. Fast forward a few months to San Diego Comic-Con in 2023, 2 years ago almost. And I was on a panel with both Chris and Gerry, because I, full disclosure, have a middle grade fantasy series with IFWG, the Garza twins, and we've had some success with that over the years, and so I had just started as the co-editor in chief at Chispa, and we all came together, big comic book fans, all of us trying to do stuff. And when I got a chance
for full disclosure here, Gerry and I are still very sorry, David, that we couldn't approve your cannibalistic middle grade fantasy series idea, unfortunately.
I know you had to nix it. I know you were
Missed
worried about
opportunity.
marketing. You were worried about marketing. I was like, okay, spin it off, and it could have like cannibal kids in middle school. Like, why not? Like, they bring their lunch.
Hey, kids need school lunches, man.
Yeah, they bring their lunch, and it's different from other kids.
Yeah, I think it was the lunch swaps idea that was too much.
Just Chris was like, yeah, I've got to draw a line somewhere, my friend, and that's it right there. But so it was really, really cool to talk to you guys, and we were just chatting about a bunch of things, and I was like, you know what? I'm working on this idea with my friend Drew Edwards, and to hell with it. Will you let me pitch it to you? And I did, and you both were like very enthusiastic about the idea, and you liked it, and we had some really, really good conversations about things that would make the story stronger, or things that perhaps we hadn't like really fleshed out, that you were interested in seeing fleshed out, and just thinking about some of the mechanics of it and so forth. And it was a great conversation. And I came back to Texas, talked to Drew about the possibility. Drew was like, enthusiastic about the opportunity to work with you, and then the ball got once we had we got some notes from you and so forth. It was time to start like actually figuring out the story, right, Drew? Like breaking it out and writing the script. Oh my God, writing scripts with you is so much fun. So much
Yeah,
fun.
I this is my first time really working with a co-writer, this extensively, and I've had like the phone calls and email sessions, and when we do get together in person, it's just such a different way to work on something. With Halloween Man, I am the beginning and the end of the entire process as far as decision making goes. But
Yeah.
like working on this it's nice to have somebody to bounce an idea off of, and get that sort of is this working, isn't this working kind of instant, because when you're the sole decision maker, it can, you don't always know that you're making the best decisions. But when I have somebody like of David's caliber, to bounce an idea off of, I'm 99% sure that it's a good idea. Like, not to get too Pollyanna-ish about it, but working with you has made me a better writer.
So
Thank you.
what is your process like? I'm curious when you do write together, because I've co-written a few things with another person, and we they were more plot focused and I was more dialogue focused, and then we'd swap and like so how do you, especially when you write a script, how do you kind of like go back and forth with it? Do you just keep kind of sending it back and forth?
Well, one of the things that we do is we the first issue, we literally wrote most of it together at Drew's house, so that we could like learn each other's voices and styles, and like come to an understanding about kind of like the division of labor, I guess you would call it.
Mhm.
And it helped us to to break things out. And so when we were doing that, it became very clear that Drew is really, really great at action, and can do a lot of the heavy lifting there, and is really good at like quirky characters, like kind of like offbeat, those kind of like color characters. He does it really well. He's really good with like dialects and things like that. The quirkiness. Um, and I'm a lot more like serious, and I do like a shit ton of research, and like just like I'm obsessed over things, and like just like come up with all this like minutia, and he'll come in like a whirlwind, and he'll be like and and so we have different styles, but they are compatible, because what it means is that when we're working together in person, that we bounce things off each other, and the energy is really great. He is on his feet most of the time, walking around, acting things out. It's like really great.
Yeah.
And I'm there just like typing away as fast as I can the stuff he's saying. It's a lot of fun. We should do like we should record that one day. Just
A lot of the action scenes that are, or I guess I should say, kill scenes
yeah, kill
that
scenes.
are in some of the comic. David had the pleasure of seeing me pantomime out
Yes.
in my living room.
Now I got to
And,
get
you
you
know,
to act though. Now you have to have the actual
I
prop.
well, I do. Not the
he
surprise.
has got a baseball bat. He uses
I have a baseball bat that I
swinging it around.
yeah.
His baby is there, like in like the little
Yeah.
stroller, and he's like, and she's like just delighted. Oh my dad is acting out a serial killer.
I turned to my baby daughter and I was like, your Uncle David and I are plotting on ways to scare the hell out of people.
Yeah.
And
It's great.
we come up with we came up with a very detailed plot of like
Yeah.
all the issues, and then we kind of broke down almost by page
Yeah.
that like who would be doing what, but
Yeah.
also, a lot of the stuff that actually still ended up in it ended up surprising me, because like how anybody who's familiar with Halloween Man knows that there's a lot of comedy in that book, but I was actually planning on playing this almost completely tongue out of cheek. But like when I got into writing it, I was like, well, this is my chance to kind of do those like full Sam Raimi, Evil Dead style horror sequences because Halloween Man at its core, even though it's got horror elements, is more of a superhero book. And it's also a very Silver Age inspired superhero book. So there's just a lot of stuff that I don't necessarily lean into with this. But as a big horror fan, I was like, well, the training wheels are off. I can do all the crazy things that I've kind of held back on. And so the sort of macabre humor that ended up in the script, I think a lot of that ended up coming from me. But also, I mean, again, David and I end up making each other laugh a lot through these conversations.
Monica, to kind of continue answering your question. So, I mean, that's what we did with the first issue, and we also did it to a large extent for the last issue. But what we decided to do with the four in the middle was to break the story out, like Drew has said, essentially page by page, or like a couple of pages at a time, and then just kind of go off and like write. And actually, although we both were involved in writing and revising and editing, and there was we have like these email chains we're going back and forth about little minutia. We tried to kind of say, you're going to primarily be in charge of these, and I'm going to be primarily in charge of these, and we will go in and work on these things together. I'll come in and do a dialogue pass. You come in and do an action pass, and just because we love each other, we're friends, and we care about and value each other's opinions. It was actually a really, really pleasant experience where we would be geeking out at each other's work, like, "Oh my God, that's so awesome what you did," and "Oh, that's great." And it was a delightful, lovely process. Differently from Drew, have worked with other writers a lot. I've co-written multiple books with other people, and so I kind of knew that eventually we'd find a rhythm, and we have, and it's a very effective and good rhythm.
And we make each other, I think, for this particular genre, I think we make each other better, you know, because it's the stuff that we both like, but also we bring, you know, different influences as well to it, that, and you know, your depth of knowledge about folklore and mythology, but also the way you write, the, you know, the sort of queer romance aspect to it, which, you know, you definitely, you know, David very much zeroed in on that relationship. And you know, like, he was always, you know, anytime I would be writing Sam or Roz, like, David was always kind of my North Star on those particular characters.
Yeah, and whenever we're dealing with like with Zeke Gavin, the older ex FBI profiler and kind of con man and pseudo cowboy, it's a great character. You know, I definitely trust Drew on that. And then Drew's like when we're writing the matron, because each of the matrons, they're different. They have like a different the second matron, Xena, is quippier, more sarcastic, more, and it was great because we didn't know until we started writing her like what she was be like as a killer. And she just kind of, like you said, like originally she was going to be very kind of like laconic and not like, you know, just like kind of scary, but she evolved into like the quippiest. It's just hilarious. It's great, and so eventually we figured that she's a true crime fan because she's, you know, the granddaughter of a serial killer. She's been kind of obsessed with this her entire life. And so she quotes serial killer. It was
That's
Drew came
great.
up with this idea of her quoting serial killers. And I was like, dude, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's so much fun. So, you know, Monica, I don't, I want to get to you like now, and then we can get the IPI guys to come in and we can talk about the campaign. But, you know, we had been hoping for, um, a woman to illustrate this, somebody who had also like the skills to do horror. And you know, my daughter Loba did the original like kind of like character designs for me because she basically worked for like free. You know, you're my daughter, help me. We want to design. Here's
They're
the stuff.
amazing though.
Yeah. And she did a really great job. She's a tattoo artist and she's illustrated some different like book covers or whatever. And she, you know, she was able to bring the elements that we were talking about to her together, like this cloak, this axe, these like runes, this mask, and just make a really, you know, frankly, dread-inspiring character. Um, but to put that character into a horror comic and to put her in motion, you know, that's something that we needed somebody of your caliber to do. And you know, I know that you worked like briefly with Drew on something, but like I'm just curious, like how when we reached out to you, what was your first impression of the project? And like,
I mean, like terrifying, honestly, not just because of the subject matter, but like, I mean, I've always been kind of categorized as being cartoony. Even when I've tried to do serious stuff, people have said I'm too cartoony. So I thought it would be a super fun challenge because I've drawn comics about assassins and stuff, but it's still like you said, had a sense of humor. It was like tongue in cheek. So I wasn't sure if I could, but then I was like, oh yeah, I do watch, like, once I got over like being a chicken when I was like a teenager, I got more and more into horror movies.
yeah.
And so I think a lot of that has kind of like seeped in now. So I feel more comfortable being like really gross and like more violent. I mean, violence I never had a problem with, to be
Yeah,
honest.
but it's the gore. The thing is, like, but I think that you know, maybe inherent or latent suppressed squeamishness is going to redound to the book's benefit because you know we want the book to be, you know, a strong horror book and have gore or whatever, but we don't want the gore to be hyper realistic. And I
Yeah.
think your style, and one of the things that it does is it filters because there is, you know, a realism to what you do, but there's also a slight element of caricature. And I think that's what people who don't know how to express what they're saying is there's like just a slight element of caricature, a slight element of bigger than life, of things like pushing the extremes. And I think that's good because it for something that's got like big feelings and and big themes and like big murders, that kind of bombast is actually great. And it really works for a story that is a little retro. I mean, it's happening in 2021, although there's a huge flashback in the first issue that people, so when people get volume 1, like you're gonna have multiple pages, and we'll show you some in a second, flashback. But I love what your interpretation of the matron, and it just breathed life into her. She like came alive in this really cool way. Um, Tell everybody about your, once you were thinking about like the Czech Republic and Czech art or whatever, like what occurred to you to play around with. I think this is so great what you did.
In terms, well, now I'm blanking.
Yeah,
I
in
don't
terms
know.
of like taking Czech, Art Deco.
Oh, the Musha stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my husband and I a couple years ago we went to Prague, and so we were there over Christmas, and it was funny. And I forget, of course, now, because like he and I drive to Dallas all the time to visit his daughters, and so we always pass like there's a bunch of like Czech bakeries, and there's like Waxahachie and all these like places we travel through. So we knew there was like a Czech population, but when we actually went to Prague, we saw like there was a town that was named exactly the same as one in Texas. So
Oh wow.
that
Yeah.
was such like a powerful connection. And then of course while we were there, we bought a bunch of like Musha prints and everything. And so yeah, I thought it would be fun to do because I was looking up Slavic folklore, and there's so much great artwork, of course, that's very it's very like Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales, but much darker and more stylized. And so I would love to do even just like a series of like different stages of her throughout the series and all these like kind of more ornate design senses
Yeah. From
from
different eras.
yeah, different eras. And so yeah, so I took Musha's inspiration to try to do some terrifying matron
Yeah,
versions.
I mean, and they're awesome, and we'll also show those in a second when we're looking at the page. It's just really really great, and we're so fortunate to have you as a part of the project, and
No, I'm
it,
thrilled to be here, and also I hope my art provides kind of an entryway for people who may not be super into horror comics, because I've found that to be a barrier in the past as a reader, like coming into horror comics. Like sometimes when it was too detailed, I felt closed off and I didn't like want to engage. So I'm hoping that this style
no,
will kind of bring
I
You
people.
think it
know,
works right. Yeah, go ahead.
from the get-go, when the very first time I met you years back at Haven Con, which is a great LGBTQ plus comic
I've
book
never had it
convention.
again.
Yeah, well, I've actually been emailing with them. It hopefully it'll come back.
Yeah.
But from the moment I saw your artwork, particularly your cryptids, I knew you had potential as a horror comics
Oh,
artist
that's
because
all.
like your creature designs are amazing, and and they range from being very fun and to being very scary. And so the fact, again, I've always wanted to work with you in some
Yeah,
capacity, like
likewise.
since yeah, so like getting this chance for this to come together like this. And I think I you talk about it, the barrier of artwork. I actually think in some ways, I think having, because like when people think of horror comics, I think the first thing they think of is maybe like Bernie Wrightston or something like that. But I think in some ways having a style that's maybe a little removed from that can be better because it's a little disarming, like so when something scary happens, perhaps you're not expecting it the way that if you were to go into something that looks like vintage Bernie Wrightston, Swamp Thing, like and also like the kinetic movement that you have put into this character, like some of those pages that we're going to be looking at, to me, I immediately thought like this is almost like watching an anime. Like this is just so like the sense of motion to it, which is like so important with this character, and the see her strength. And when she swings that axe, the way you draw her, you can just feel it. But also like the cover that you did of her like walking in the snow with like the blood on her axe and the blood on her, like I got chills when I saw that. Like my only reaction the first time I saw that, I was like, whoa. Like and so like, don't be surprised when you start getting offered more horror gigs after that, because I think you may have found a new niche for yourself, because you got the chops, no pun intended.
I got the axe
Look,
chops.
I'd like to make the comparison with your style, Monica, and there's a great tradition in comics, particularly for me, going back to a guy called Harvey Kurtzman.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, he did some war stories, and he had a loose, quote unquote, cartoony style. And yet, some of his war comics, there's a famous cover that he did, and of two soldiers in a trench, and one guy's got a bullet through his head, and the another guy's yelling, "Oh, there's an armistice, the war is over," and the comment is, tell Jonesy about your armistice, and poor Jonesy's got a bullet in his head, and it's loose and it's cartoony, and what it does is it just makes you gravitate towards the emotional weight of the scene even more, and I think that's an advantage of your kind of a style with this kind of material that David and Drew have come up with. It pushes the reader into really sort of concentrating on the emotional content of the horrible things happening, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think
thank
if you,
that's
I think if you go back to what David was saying before about the triangle, right? That the triangle of the story where we've got the the sort of slasher horror, the folk horror, and then the drama in that other corner. I was talking about this with David a couple of days ago, and I was saying that I think for me, it's not scary if that drama element isn't there. Otherwise, it's just like, here's some blood and guts and here's some amazing kills, but it lacks that fear. And I think what's great about Monica's art, I think what's great about your art, Monica, is that you kind of write, you can do all three corners of it, right in the middle, but that ability to do that drama as well as the other stuff is what really sells it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad that, because I think horror is only important so much as it's a vehicle for other emotions and other expressions. Like horror just by itself, yeah, kind of falls flat.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Horror needs to be part of something else. It needs to, I mean, there's catharsis that comes just from the horror itself. But that catharsis doesn't work as well if you don't care about the characters. Like when, you'll see a cheap like rip-off film and like none of the teens who are about to get slaughtered are particularly interesting. They all kind of suck, and you can basically wish they would all die. And
Yeah,
so,
I've
as they're
definitely
killed
done
off,
that for
you're just like, yeah, kill that one, kill it. But when you care about them, it hurts to see them die, and that is the more powerful kind of experience. Now, these I'm showing people.
Can I ask a quick question about the character design? If you scroll back a bit to the one where she's jumping over with the axe raised.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very minor point, but it's something that I love about what you're trying to do with this story. The fact that she's wearing lace-up combat boots or work boots, whatever they are, rather than, superhero pirate boots or something like that, that's kind of a touch, because you've got the robe and the mask which speak to, antiquity and old-fashionedness and particular weird iconography, and the axe is sort of old world as well. But those boots, they just ground it, just in reality and working class.
Yeah.
And it tells the reader immediately, that this is not a ghost or something like that. It just says this is some kind of person.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of neat. And it's funny how little design choices really make a character something special. You know, the combination of how you draw.
I think that's really well said. A couple things I'm going to point out really fast. This is part of the flashback sequence that's kind of broken up over the first issue. And it is it's set in 75. The colors are different in the flashback sequence than they're going to be in the present day sequences. So it's like there's also this deliberate like echoing of comics from the 70s, which I think is really, really cool. But look right here by the door, they're the work boots right there that she's gonna put on after her son has just had his head blown off. She's gonna put these on and lace them up and step out into this, it's just amazing. And look at how the boots, they may not even be her boots. They may be like her son's boots, or they're like massive work boots, or they might be hers. But this, I don't remember this detail, Monica, being in the script. And maybe
it was.
Oh, really?
I don't know. I don't know. No, I don't know. I don't want to take
Yeah,
credit. So.
yeah. I think we're gonna say that you came up with it because
Okay, and I will take credit. Okay.
yeah. So whoever, because it was either you or Drew, because this was not my idea. So because I would remember having thought of it.
But that's just a
I think this is definitely a Monica. Like
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
pretty
not
sure.
It's
Because I
so-
remember.
which is
That's
surprising
right,
because I hate drawing shoes, so and I'm really bad at
You
it.
edit. I think that because there was like an emphasis on the shoes in the script, like she's wearing, work boots.
Yeah.
I just love the idea that she's come and I don't know. See, it looks like Joseph, her son, is not wearing shoes, but who knows, right? He's just there. But I just the idea of the boots just being by the door, and then that's what she slips in and just comes out and like just wreaks havoc
Well,
on
it
the
kind
people.
of reminded me of, and I mean, it's not the same, but there were a lot of like serial killer stories from the early 1900s that were kind of opportunistic people who just kind of showed up and knew every family had an axe, and they would just show up and then take the family axe and murder everybody,
Yeah.
and then like hop on the train and leave town. And that happened over and over again. And this story kind of reminded, even though that's their family axe, it's like, and when she like runs out with the hammer, it's like they're just used to having like kind of opportunistic things around them that they can use. And so the
Yeah.
boots kind of made me think of that too.
Yeah, I do think it's great. And then it just kind of becomes, part of the second matron's just understanding of what her garb is to be because her grandmother died with these kinds of boots. And I don't think we've ever like said that, but it feels like that's what it is because it's like Chris was saying, like all the rest of it is very iconic, and there's the very very old school cloak and the mysterious mask and the bearded axe and then work boots.
Well, the
Maybe-
funny thing is the image of the work boots when I was writing some of the latter issues, it became such an ingrained thing. I actually had the song "These Boots Were Made for Walking" like on repeat
That's
several
so
times
good.
when I was working on the script.
That's so good.
I just
Um, Go ahead,
sorry,
Jason.
I just don't remember like reading the script for the first time, which was only in December, I think. And I saw that panel description where the boots hit the bonnet of the car, and I was like, yes, this is that was a moment that really stood out to me and went, this is amazing. Like this script, this is gonna look incredible.
Yeah. So so I figure that we could kind of like walk people through. So what IPI decided to do with this is kind of exciting. I had my Eisner nominated book Clockwork Vendetta, The Witch Owl Parliament, published by Lee and Low out of New York. And they also, because I was a writer, primarily of a very different sort of book, but also primarily of young adult books. And that is a young adult graphic novel, but they wanted to appeal to a wider audience because they felt like it would be a crossover to adults. They also partnered up with Kickstarter and did this sort of pre-order thing with lots of swag and options, and it did very well. And so when IPI suggested it for this, I thought that's great. This is a perfect opportunity. Why have people wait until we've put all six? So for those of you who are watching who don't know how this works, this is if it's normally if it's a 6-issue miniseries like this was conceived of, you usually have all 6 issues written and illustrated and colored and lettered before the first issue even goes out to stores, or even before it's even announced for stores to be able to acquire. And doing it this way allows people to get the story much earlier. Then the idea is to release 3 graphic novels of of roughly 50 to 60 pages each, with lots of like cool art in the appendices and stuff like this, lots of bells and whistles that you might not normally get, and have people who decide to pre-order them and back them get the opportunity to get that story early, so that as we're working on it, rather than wait until the end of the year to start putting the book out, we can start putting the story out now for people who want it. And to me, that's like really exciting. And I really do hope that in my messaging and social media, I'm getting that across. This is like us being so excited about a story that we want to share it now. We don't want to wait. We could wait, but we don't want to wait. And so we've put together this Kickstarter, and Kickstarter, like, really, really loves the project, and even it gave us this nice little seal, project we love, with the little heart in the middle. I imagine the matron like throwing her axe like right through that heart and breaking it in half. It's interesting because a lot of the action of the story happens in February of 2021, mostly on Valentine's Day, right, Drew? Isn't that is so cool and so ironic? Which allows us to play up a little bit some of the melodrama that's happening between our two leads. So y'all feel free to jump in at any moment. I'm just gonna kind of walk people through it.
Well,
Yeah,
something you brought up about the timing of it, I think something else that's really interesting about this series is that we have rooted it in a real event, not a real serial killer, but the bulk of the action, even though we do have the flashback to the 1970s, the bulk of the action takes place during the 2021 blizzard that hit Texas. So
Yeah.
I think, I've said this to you before, David. I am a big believer that the more specific you make something, the more relatable it actually is. So the fact that we are like sticking this into this event that so many Texans have living memory of.
Yeah.
And
I think a lot of the nation, maybe even the world, is aware of because of Ted Cruz running off to Cancun in the
yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that will make it relatable to, because these days, almost everybody, they have some sort of struggle that they've lived through, and I feel like this comic can provide catharsis, because what you have here is that, but turned into a horror story, turned into a scary story. And what I'm hoping is, at least for me, I was able to kind of exercise the demons of the COVID years and the blizzard and that whole thing through telling this story. And I hope everybody, yeah, it was horrible. Now we've put a face on it. And while you can't actually punch a blizzard, you can fight back against a monster. You can fight back against the slasher. And I hope everybody gets that same feeling from it that I do.
Yeah. And so there is this rootedness in a specific thing. And there's also rootedness in like the experiences of people, in small towns across America and across the world, when they become, the objects of gentrification. So here's this little tagline that I created. Gentrification took her town, eminent domain took her home. Now Xena Krennic is out for vengeance, and she is going to eat the rich, quite literally. Because a reminder, she's not just an axe murderer, she's the granddaughter of a cannibal axe murderer, and she's like going to kind of rekindle that family tradition. It's just so beautiful. I remember Chris when I was telling him about this at San Diego Comic-Con, I could just see him kind of like getting a little queasy, like, okay, does she have to be a cannibal? I'm like, yeah, she's got to be a cannibal. And there's this just amazing, amazing drawing of the matron. Just I just when we saw it. But first, we saw it in the sketch, and Drew was like, "Yeah, that's the one," because you had the other one. Remember, Monica? Where
It's a great point to focus on because, yeah, cannibalism as a horror trope is something that not you people, but that other, shall we say, lesser skilled or lesser imaginative practitioners will reach for just for the shock value.
exactly?
Right?
Yeah.
Are you talking
And
about me, Chris? My last Kickstarter was a cannibal book.
no, you took it somewhere else entirely, Jason, which
I
was
took mine
outer
into space,
But
but yeah.
yeah. But yeah, look, sometimes it's just a lazy use of a trope.
It can be.
But
Yep.
but like everything else that you've done with this, you guys have weaved something very complex, very multifaceted, and yeah, the trick is that they all those aspects are important and they're all part of the genuine needs of the setting and the story,
Yeah.
and that's what good creators do. They weave good because God, you could pick any one of us and we would have very complex life histories and
Yeah.
1,001 influences, and for each of us there's not one or two influences that make us what
Oh
we
no.
are. There's dozens, and there's not one or two aspects of our history that informs our decisions. There's multiple and they change. But for fiction, to pick a group and distill them and make them track all the way through a story, that takes effort and skill. And what you were doing with cannibalism here, is making it an integral part of the story.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Not something slapped on to get
No.
clicks.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just for because I mean, anybody who knows that anything about me knows that I write a lot about Mesoamerica, about the Aztec Empire, and stuff like that. And I have like I've spent like a couple of decades like pushing back against Aztecs were cannibals, nonsense, and then to see me like embracing it, you have to go like, he must have a reason for doing this, and I do. So that I mean that's really really well put, Chris. A lot of things um can be embraced if they're done well with the right intentions to the right degree and woven into the story the right way. So what we have here on this Kickstarter is kind of like a synopsis that kind of breaks down the story and kind of gives you the background of Rosina Krennic, who was the first matron who got killed in 1975. And then where our story picks up is 46 years later, literally on the anniversary of her death, where her granddaughter is, a 58-year-old waitress who's been trying to like have peace in her life. I mean, she's been, things that are not necessarily on the page in volume one, but she's definitely been obsessed with serial killers and just trying to grapple with her own impulses. But she's kept them in check for these 46 years and has basically tried to live a normal life and give her family some like, solidity or whatever. But when everything goes to hell in the middle of this winter storm, it's like whatever, all bets are off. And she's got a granddaughter, and the one of the things that Chris you pushed for, which just like really inspired us, was you're like, if you're gonna have a killer like this, who's gonna stand against her? Have you thought about like the kind of characters that will be able to face her down and like what they're gonna be like? And so we came up with the idea of the descendants of those people, like Sam Maldonado was the sheriff who killed the matron, and his granddaughter is now an 18-year-old freshman at the University of Texas San Antonio satellite campus there in the town of Ascuas, and she has begun to date the one of the descendants of the original matron, Roz Krennic, who's actually Rosina Krennic the third. So it's really weird that this family has continued to name their daughters after the killer, but it's like a family tradition now. What are you gonna do? And so it's the anniversary. The town is under a lot of media attention, but then this cold snap comes through, and Roz loses her job to gentrification. She loses her home as to eminent domain, all on the same day, and it just cracks something in her. Yeah, she takes up the axe and takes up the oh gosh, and takes up the masculine. Monica had to leave us, so she said goodbye in the chat, and I'm sorry, it's barely saw it right now. So that is the premise of this, that she takes up the as it says right here, Xena was meant to take up the mask, cloak, and axe, and now that the world is turning against her and her kin, it's time for the matron to rise once more to slice away power, privilege, and a pound of flesh. We've got this really amazing cover, and it's going to be in a variant that will have foil. Jason, that is so cool, right? You can imagine it kind of like popping off of the page, and it will be the blood on her that will be popping off the page, which is, yeah, macabre but cool at the same time, right?
It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And so there's that artwork that we walked you guys through that just shows that final showdown in 1975. We don't show what happens to her, but obviously she dies, right? We've already spoiled that. Some things that we think makes this title unique, that it has to do a little bit with what we were talking about, that triangle, that pyramid, but it's this authentic Texas horror. Drew and I are from Texas, and Drew, I mean, I knew when you were inspired to write this, you wanted to make it like Texas, and I think that's really, really great. Slavic mythology we've brought in, the emotional heft, the all the drama, the background of these characters, their tangled histories, and how all of that redounds in the midst of the story. And here are our heroes. So there's Sam Maldonado, there's Roz Krennic, and here is, oh my God, what's he called, Drew? What is his nickname?
The Sheriff of Hell.
The Sheriff of Hell, Zeke Gavin, the only person to survive an attack by the first matron when he was in his 20s. He's gone on to kind of make a career for himself. He got a doctorate. And he got these multiple graduate degrees in psychology and parapsychology and a lot of stuff. What did you call him? You said he's kind of like an inverse Fox Mulder, right?
Yeah, he had this one experience with the matron and discovered that, had this feeling of something that was supernatural. And so when he started to work for the FBI, he went out looking for the truth, and what he found is that it's all bunk. Most things that are seemingly supernatural are in fact not. But in the great American tradition of being a huckster, when he went on to write all these true crime books, he just embellished stuff. So if it was something about a sex cult, well, maybe they're vampires. Oh, if there's something about a serial killer who thinks he's possessed by the devil, well, maybe he was a werewolf, and people kind of buy into this. So he is a he is a magnificent bastard in the best tradition of it. He is,
and he wrote like his best-selling book is his memoir about surviving the matron, and it's called Punching Death. So he's just full of bombast, over the top. He's got a very affected, over the top kind of Texas accent that's almost like
cartoonish.
Yeah, it's cartoonish, but he's also a good person who's just had to sublimate his goodness. I think he's kind of a coward, but he's he's over the course of the book, he becomes a real mentor for Sam, who is studying criminology and wants to be an FBI agent. And so it's really great. And as we mentioned, Roz and Sam are in a relationship, but that relationship gets kind of blown up by the arrival of the murderous grandmother. You're like dating a girl and she's kind of cool or whatever, and then your grandmother turns out to be,
a psychopath.
A psychopath who wants to kill your entire family because one of their members is responsible for the death of her grandmother. And so it's like this Romeo and Juliet-esque kind of like thing going on in the feuding families and so forth. And It's
also Hatfields and McCoy's.
Hatfields and
You know,
McCoy's.
there's a lot of swirling influences that you and I both brought to this.
Absolutely.
Well, who doesn't love a good murder grandma?
Murder Grandma. That's great.
Yeah,
That's what we're going
the
to call
murder
it.
granny.
The Matron. That'll be the second miniseries. The Matron, Murder Grandma.
Murder Grandma.
So, you've met Monica. She had to take off, and our colorist is Harry Saxon's a great award-winning and amazing artist, in his own right, but has dedicated himself to coloring in recent years. Been nominated for an Eisner and GLAAD Media Award twice. Great guy. Works out of Greece. But I think a lot of people in the industry will recognize his name. We got some great rewards. There's the digital rewards, the PDF copy of the Matron. Physical rewards are the print copy of the variant cover. We're gonna have trading cards. We're gonna have these signed postcards that I'll show you in a minute. You can even get yourself drawn into the pages of the Matron. And if you really want to go for it, you can get yourself killed by the Matron. Your face can be on one of the victims of the Matron.
An axe going right into your face. If that is what you want.
As Jason has decided to work as one of the taglines, you will get to kiss her axe. This is great. I still think that's really inspiring. Basically, I don't know. We just need some kind of image where the axe is coming to you. Kiss her axe. The Matron. I don't know. We'll get Monica to draw something. We have some session rewards where you can have conversations with me, with Drew, with Gerry, Jason, and Chris, all of whom have lots of industry experience to impart, each of us in slightly different ways. So when you look at the actual descriptions of the rewards, you can kind of see what you might get out of it if you are an aspiring comics creator, either indie or you want to go with an actual publisher or whatever. We are the people to talk to. We've got among the five of us, we've got a lot of experience and would love to be able to impart some.
And look, I have to say, adding to the potential of that is we're not just some professionals who are happy to do some analysis of people's stuff, but Gerry's a publisher. So at IPI and IFWG Publishing are living, going publishing concerns, doing books and comic books to the direct market and to the main wider bookstore stuff. So, and
you never know. You never know. You may have.
If we see something good,
yeah.
Well, it's not out of the realms of possibility that besides giving general guidance, if we see someone we think might suit a project that's coming up in the future, we'll say so. We're not shy about that.
That is a really awesome point. And here's an example of some of that art that Monica was talking about, inspired by by Czech artists. It's just a really, really amazing thing. You can get postcard signed by us. Here's another one of those images. It's so cool. Pensive. I mean, she's supposed to be putting on her mask, but she looks slightly pensive. Who do I kill next?
Maybe she's about to kiss the axe.
She does look like maybe she's going to pull the mask off and kiss the axe. That would be perfect. We just need the follow up. You flip the card over and there's her giving a kiss to the axe. By the way, the axe has engraved in Slavic runes, on one side the word smrt, which means death, and the other side the word zima, which means winter. It's her little catchphrase is "I am winter, I am death." Or it was the catchphrase of the first one. The second one is a lot more talkative. The first one, basically, that's what she would say, and then she'd kill your ass. And the second one will quote a serial killer and harangue you and just make fun of you. And she's more of the Freddy Krueger meets Spidey meets, I don't know. Definitely very quippy. And Drew is mostly responsible for her quips. It's adorable. So yeah, this is a greater description of it. Some basic stuff about IPI Comics, so you know that you're dealing with people who know what they're up to. And here's like kind of the outline of when the awards come out. The Kickstarter is launching this month. It ends next month. We get a digital release of chapter 1, the first half of the graphic novel in June, and then the full thing comes out in July, and physical awards then ship in 2025. So we would just love it if you could pop over and support our campaign. Like I say, it's a way for you to get an advance screening, advance view of what we think is going to be a successful and beloved title. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm being a little arrogant, but you get in on the ground floor. I'll be able to say, I got that book before anybody else did. I read that shit before anybody else. So even
all the cool kids are doing it.
Yeah, all the cool kids are doing it. So, anything that anybody wants to say before we let everybody go? I know that in Australia it is early afternoon. Some of you may not have even had lunch yet. I don't know. That would be devastating. Hopefully you've eaten something. But this would be, Chris has had to run.
Not human flesh, though, right?
Right. Yeah.
Definitely not. Human flesh.
It was really funny because there's a scene, a slight spoiler, but there's a scene where the Mexican dish pozole is served, and Gerry, who's like a big fan of Mexican cuisine and has made many awesome recipes. You definitely should follow him on Instagram so you can see the photos of the stuff he makes. I'm gonna get to Australia, bro, or you're gonna come here and we're gonna cook together. I don't know. It's gonna be, and we're just gonna make videos, and we're just gonna be like we'll spend a week just glutting ourselves with really good Mexican food. Does it sound like a plan to you? I think it's but pozole, of course, is a very common Mexican soup when you eat in cold weather. It's got hominy and usually pork, and a red sauce that's made with a lot of chilies and stuff like that. You chop up red cabbage and put it on top. You eat it with tortilla chips. It's delicious. But despite what I was saying about the Aztecs not being cannibals, the aristocracy, especially those involved in religious rituals and the state religion, would once a year have pozole, but they would have human flesh in it. And so there is a scene where there's pozole being eaten, and I was like, Drew, do you get why I picked pozole? And he was like, no, and I had to explain all this stuff that I just explained to you. So now you will know, you will have a heads up that when you see the pozole, it is an allusion to the Aztec aristocracy eating the flesh of the working class. So anyway, gentlemen, it's been fun. I know I've talked a lot, but I just had a vision for what I wanted to say, and it's my Zoom channel, so I just did what the hell I wanted to. So hopefully you're all.
No, you did right. You did that. It was the right thing because it also we had a lot of items to cover, and by having someone direct it like yourself as an MC, we were able to get through them. So it was a good thing.
Awesome. Well, it was, as always, such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you, those of you who have been watching. Yeah, okay. So you want to the link to the project itself? Let me pull that up. Let me get it. I'll yank it from here and plug it into the chat. And there you click on that link and you can back it. And there are different levels. You could just get the comic itself, or you can get any of the extra add-ons that you want. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Thanks for staying up to this hour, Drew. I know that you probably have lots of other things that you could be doing. You had a long day. The rest of you have a blessed, wonderful, human meat-free, slasher-free Sunday afternoon. Okay. Bye.
Easy like a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
I think we're going to have vegetarian for dinner tonight.